Hi there, and welcome to The Daily Gardener, a podcast about garden news, literature, and history. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and today is April 12th. Today we celebrate the American doctor and amateur botanist who left a legacy in Michigan. And we'll also learn about the very first botanist to explore Michigan and Mackinac Island. We'll recognize the man who started the California Botanical Society, and we'll hear a quick thought on spring by Ellis Peters. We grow that garden library today with a beautiful book about hydrangea, and then we'll wrap things up with National Licorice Day. But before we get to all of that, let's check out today's curated news. Today's curated news comes to us from Ideal Home in an article that was written by Tamara Kelly, and the article was called North-Facing Garden Ideas, and the subtitle is Top Tips to Make the Most of a Shaded Outdoor Space. You know, my very first garden back in Maple Grove was a north-facing garden, so I still have a tender spot in my heart for every gardener who finds himself in a similar situation. And I thought Tamara's tips here were very, very helpful. And of course, she starts out by encouraging us to evaluate the quality of our shade. Are we talking about light shade or dappled shade, or are we truly talking about deep shade? Tamara also talks about how to create more light, whether that's removing some of the tree canopy, incorporating water features, because of course, water does a wonderful job of reflecting light, or even adding man-made elements like mirrors. And I love mirrors in the garden. Finally, Tamara talks about picking the right plants for shade, improving the soil, and enlivening the space with yellow, which I thought was a fantastic idea because that bright splash of yellow can really add a sense of happiness and cheer to a space that might otherwise feel dark or colorless. Now, the outdoor consultant that Tamara quotes in this article says that the bright, uplifting tone of yellow is perfect for outdoors because it's a natural, good fit with the garden. It's rooted in a color of nature that's reminiscent of spring days, golden daffodils, and cherry sunflowers. And of course, whatever the weather, yellow is going to help bring the sunshine into your shady garden. Now, before we head into the rest of the show, I just wanted to add a few of my own insights into having a north-facing garden. You know, one is that a shady garden, by definition, is cooler, and that can mean that it's the perfect space to incorporate a seating area or even a dining area where you don't have to worry about getting sunburnt. You know, these spaces can be warmed up with elements like fire pits or pergolas, and that extra little bit of shelter or seating in a shady space can be great, especially if you have a long, hot summer ahead or if you're trying to minimize your sun exposure. And then finally, the other thing that I appreciate about having my north-facing garden is that I will often save some of the plants that I'm going to grow in my kitchen garden and have them grow in my north-facing garden. And I know that seems counterintuitive, but in essence, what I'm doing there is I'm staggering the harvest because I can experience about a 2 to 4 week delay on harvesting things like my lettuce or my herbs, just by planting it in a container that's in a north-facing garden. Now, of course, I'm not advocating growing these in complete shade. There are parts of my north-facing garden that are definitely part shade, and that's where I put these types of containers. But plants that are growing in a north-facing garden generally grow at a slower rate than they would if they were in a south-facing garden. And sometimes that slower pace is just a little nicer. It's just a little more manageable, especially if you have a busy schedule. Anyway, I love this topic that was featured in Ideal Home. And if you would like to follow up and read it for yourself, there are a ton of great ideas in this post, way more than what I covered right now. You'll be able to find it very easily in the Facebook group for listeners of the show. So if you're on the group, you're just going to head on up to the little magnifying glass and search for the word North, and this post will pop up. Now, if you're not in the group, don't worry about it. It is so easy to join this free and private group. All you need to do is head on up to the search bar the next time you're on Facebook and type in the words Daily Gardener Community, where you'd search for a friend, and then request to join. I'd love to meet you in the group. It's time for today's botanical history. Here's botanical history for today, April 12th. Today is the anniversary of the death of the American doctor, University of Michigan regent, and amateur botanist Zina Pitcher, who was profiled last week on his birthday, April 5th. Zina died on this day, April 12th, in 1872. Now, if you'll recall, Zina enjoyed botanizing in his spare time, and he's remembered for the thistle he discovered that's commonly known as Pitcher's thistle. Well, today on Zina's death date, I remember the story of a young boy who had broken his arm in the early 1840s. The boy's family had brought him down from his home in northern Michigan to Detroit for treatment. The break in the arm was bad, and doctors were beginning to think that the arm would have to be amputated. But at the very last minute, as the boy was being prepped for surgery, Dr. Pitcher was consulted. After a careful examination, Zina thought he could save the arm, and in the end, he did. Like Zina Pitcher, the little boy, Peter White, grew up to be a regent at the University of Michigan. And many decades later, he saw to it that Zina Pitcher's grave in Detroit was planted with blossoming flowers every spring. And it was on this day, April 12th, in 1810, that the 24-year-old English botanist Thomas Nuttal hopped on a coach and left for Philadelphia. Thomas was leaving to go on an expedition to study the flora of the Northwest, and the entire trip was arranged by Professor Benjamin Smith Barton of the University of Philadelphia. With a salary of $8 per month plus expenses, Thomas was eager to collect and document everything he discovered. By August 12th, he'd arrived at Mackinac Island, where he spent days botanizing. Thomas became the very first botanist to explore the flora of Michigan, including Mackinac Island. And one of Thomas's Mackinac discoveries was the dwarf lake iris, or Iris leucostris, which became the state wildflower of Michigan. Today, Mackinac State Park says this about the island's flora. 2 major forest types cover much of Mackinac Island: a fragrant coniferous forest containing cedar, spruce, and balsam fir, and paper birch, which grows around the edge of the island and wherever the soils are cool and moist. And in the shade of the evergreens grows some of the most beautiful wildflowers of the North Woods. And it was on this day, April 12th, in 1913, that Willis Linn Jepson, known as the Botany Man, gathered some 20 people together in a meeting room at the Oakland Public Museum. Willis had always dreamed of starting a botanical society for California, and the meeting agenda that day was to discuss starting such a society. 2 weeks later, the California Botanical Society was established. It's time for Unearthed Words. Today's unearthed words come from the English author, linguist, scholar, and mystery writer Edith Pargeter. Edith was a lifelong gardener, and she wrote a series of historical murder mysteries called the Codfile Chronicles. Her books centered around a 12th century Benedictine monk who was an herbalist and apothecary turned amateur sleuth. Between 1977 and 1994, Edith wrote 20 Codfile novels under the pseudonym Ellis Peters. Many of the stories begin with Brother Codfile working in his herb garden. And so today's quote is from one of Edith's books, and it goes like this: "Every spring is the only spring. A perpetual astonishment." It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, Hydrangeas by Naomi Slade. This book came out in 2020, and the subtitle is Beautiful Varieties for Home and Garden. Well, it's such a shame that Naomi's beautiful book came out during the pandemic. Naomi always does such a great job with her garden books, and I'm a huge fan of her other book on dahlias. Naomi's also written about snowdrops and orchids. Now, hydrangeas make for a beautiful garden topic. Hydrangeas bloom so abundantly, it's no wonder they're one of our favorite indoor and outdoor flowers. And hydrangeas are workhorses. They can bloom from late spring to early fall, and they come in a variety of colors that include pink, lavender, white, rose, and blue. If you're a lover of hydrangeas, or you know a gardener who is, this book is a beautiful gift. Even better, if you give someone the gift of a hydrangea this year, consider including Naomi's beautiful book as part of the present. This book is 240 pages of a truly incredible blooming plant, the hydrangea. You can get a copy of Hydrangeas by Naomi Slade and support the show using the Amazon link in today's show notes for around $15. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. Today is National Licorice Day, so I thought I would share some fun licorice facts with you. The botanical name for licorice means sweet root, and in Dutch, it's called zoethout, which means sweet wood. And the secret to the flavor of licorice, which is 50 times sweeter than sugar, by the way, is hidden in the very long roots and rhizomes of the plant. Thus, people who grew up chewing on licorice root as children remember sucking out the sweet sugars and spitting out the pulp. Now, the licorice plant is actually a perennial shrub in the legume or pea family. Don't confuse it with the annual that gets popped in containers. That's not the plant that we get licorice from. Medicinally speaking, the glycerotinic acid in licorice causes the body to hold both salt and water. And so throughout history, armies would give licorice to soldiers and horses when water was in short supply. And licorice has been used as a remedy for coughing. Hippocrates used it that way. And it also regulates digestion. In fact, Napoleon used licorice to treat his tummy troubles. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener. And remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. The Daily Gardener is produced in lovely Maple Grove and Wyoming, Minnesota, with the help of Paige Mance, Brooke Bierbaum, and Eric Begay. If you want to read today's show notes, just head on over to thedailygardener.org. And while you're there, be sure to sign up for my free Friday newsletter. And don't forget that you have a standing invitation to join the free Facebook group for listeners of the show. Just search for Daily Gardener Community the next time you're on Facebook and request to join. Last but not least, you can always get in touch by emailing me at jennifer@thedailygardener.org. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and as always, have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you tomorrow.